Hello everybody, today we're going to look at the most perfect executed attack by the young star, Darkness. So he opens with e4, he gets e5 symmetrical, and his opponent plays the Petrov defense by giving up the center pawn to win your center pawn. So this is just the main line, you don't have to understand this. He's grabbing the center, also grabbing the center, and now he puts pressure to the knight. The bishop develops castles, and c4. Pressuring the center, so you want to take and then take over here. But you can just defend, solidifying the center. And now centralizing the rook. Also centralizing the rook. It's a pretty symmetrical game. If the knight went back, it's just c4 and c6, that's different. But let's see, the queen b3, putting pressure over here and over here. Now the knight develops because it wants to go here and trade off for this good white bishop. So he wants to trade his bad knight for the good white bishop, but the dog moves thinks for half an hour and says, no, I don't want you to get my bishop. I'm just gonna prevent you, and now your knight is stuck because it can move forward, can move backwards, but there it's a bit awkward. So just a simple move, h6, preventing the bishop coming out in the future if the knight moves, attacking the queen, and just making a loft for the king in the future. So the knight develops because you might say you should develop your bishop first, right? But you can move it over here, you can move it here. So then you're gonna have to move it pretty passive because then you block the rook. So you say, no, I'll just develop my knight first and later I will activate my bishop. Now the knight retreats and now the rooks are seeing each other. So you must make a decision. Am I going to take? He takes because now the queen has to move. And now we lock the center. Why? Because the pressure doesn't really work. We didn't develop our knight this way, so our plan will be to outplay him, but not by winning the center pawn. So we grab space, and in the future you get ideas of the queen going back and playing b4, a4, b5, just storming the queen side. But first the bishop has to move. Now the knight really doesn't have any moves. So it will probably have to go around this way, which will take a lot of time. And now here we see a nice move, the knight rerouting to this side, because it wasn't really doing anything here, and it was blocking the bishop. Now the bishop has an open scope, and these bishops are very nicely, and when the knights get here, we have two bishops and two knights there at the king, and we can in the future maybe slide this bishop back and create a battery and just go straight for checkmate. But of course Fedoshev isn't gonna give out easily. This knight wasn't doing anything, so he just moved back. A bit weird, but it just wants to get out to a more active square. And here comes the knight. There is an option to take the knight and damage the pawn structure, but then you give away the dark squared bishop, and this bishop will be 5ing on this diagonal. So that would be very good for white. So let's see, you should take towards the center, and it is plus 1.2 just because of this nice bishop. So, but that didn't happen. But what did happen? The knight jumped back to the center. So it's a bit weird because the knight came out, it took the pawn, it stayed there a while, then it went back, and now it went to the center again. Why are you playing like that if you haven't developed your queen side at all? Yeah, it's just because he wants to trade some things, because he feels he's under pressure of these bishops and knights. Fedoshev, nice move, not the best move, but he puts pressure with this move, because you really want to kick it out, but if you kick it out, you lose your queen, not immediately. You can take this knight, and if you take back, you lose your queen. And if you take like this, your king is wide open. I slide my bishop back, and I'm just going with the queen for checkmate. So that doesn't work, so it's just kind of chilling over here. And now he moves the bishop back, because he wants to cover the square once more, so now he can maybe play this move g6. But now, of course, we get the diagonal, because this bishop has really struggled to get out, but now this bishop moved away, so we get control of this very, very powerful diagonal. And here, oh, I'm sorry, here the first mistake is made by Fedoseev. He pushes the pawn in front of the king, making all of these squares very weak. And you might look at sacrifices like these, but they don't really work, because it's very hard to get the queen around and really accomplish something. Also the bishop and the knight defended, so you're not really getting anything. So here the best move is to put the bishop in their territory, letting it be taken by the knight and taking with the pawn, which I understand seems a bit weird. Otherwise even this, but Fedoseev plays also a strong move, but the computer thinks is an inaccuracy. He plays bishop to c7. You might say, what? Why would he do that? Because I could just take. No, because if you take, which happened in the game, we take here, and if you take back, you get forked, even if you take with the queen. So you can take back the bishop, so you're gonna develop your knight because you wanna get back in the game. But now the bishop slides forward, putting a bit of pressure over here. And next up the rook will come and the queen will come to the party. So what does he play? He plays queen e8, moving out of the way of the rook. Doesn't matter, the rook comes anyway, taking control of a lot of important squares. And now he moves his king to the side. Why? Because he doesn't want to get any more checks or tactics like that, and just the king is safer on this side. But here comes the queen, and the threat is actually to move here and just checkmate him, because these squares are covered by the bishop and the knight. So the knight drops back, and here comes the first brilliant move, because he's sacrificing the bishop. It's pretty easy, because if that happens you fork the king and the queen, so you can take the bishop. But what can you do? You can defend your pawn with the queen, and you might look, are there any discoveries? If I give a check, he takes, and I take the queen, but the knight can recapture the queen, so that doesn't really work. But just look at all these pieces. All these pieces are active to facing the king. The king is pushed his pawns forward, and these, especially the rook doesn't participate. These bishop do, because they put pressure on the white pieces. But here he just takes that bishop, the rook comes to a very passive square, and here comes a move queen to h3, setting up stuff on this file. But also now this discovered check does work, because now the rook sees the queen and not the queen sees the queen. So if the knight recaptures it, it recaptures the rook, not the queen. So the rook comes over here. So in this position there is the move check, but after f takes, hitting the knight, boom boom, there's this threatened, so knight has to go back, and now it's pretty hard to break through, because these pieces are very active, the rook is active, the king defends the pawns, and it's just hard to break through in this position. So that's why Artagnus doesn't go for that line, but he goes for a much stronger line. Knight moving back, attacking the pawn, so you have to defend the pawn with the king. Now Artagnus plays this knight to f5, threatening again and threatening the queen. Queen has to move up, because it has to defend and it has to get out of the way. And now rook e3. Why? Because now if the knight moves anywhere, the rook will be defended and not undefended at the back rank. So the queen slides out of the way because it doesn't. And here comes the first sacrifice. Knight takes h3. What? Just sacrificing a knight. Okay, queen takes. Why is this important? It's also the move that happened in the game because of check. And now the threat is to move the rook and secure the king, the queen to the king. But so the knight blocks, and the queen takes with check. why not play rook to h3 here? You can. And then the best move is this, defending the pawn and just losing the queen and playing this position, which you will probably win, which he would win, but he goes for another line, taking a check. Now when the queen blocks, you take the rook, and you don't even recapture, you play check, the knight blocks, pawn takes, getting the passed pawn, the king moves, securing, pinning, so we will win the knight. After check, the king moves here, try to find the mating one, there it is, g4, and dark moves wins. Very good attack. Getting all the pieces to this side of the board, first with this knight maneuver, then playing this weird move, but it works, and then the bishop comes, g4, this idea of getting the bishop, trading the bishop for the knight in the center, and now mobilizing all of your pieces to the king side, sacrificing the bishop, and then trading the bishop, getting the queen to this side, realizing you can just move back, attack a pawn, get two knights very active, then stabilizing the rook, queen moves, sacrificing, oh sorry, yeah that was nice queen, sacrificing, and yeah, you kind of have to take, because let's say you move, then we can just move back, and this will just resort in a checkmate. Oh, I'm sorry, with knight to g4, because you can take because of the fork, a lot of knight forks, set takes, taking the pawn, and getting this very nice checkmate. Thank you for watching, see you later all.